Well, Teresa, just let me know when you're ready. Ready? All right, good evening. We will call the City Council meeting for Tuesday, February 16th, 2021 to order. Per Governor Inslee's Emergency Proclamation 20-28 and Healthy Washington Roadmap to Recovery Plan, the City of Auburn is prohibited from holding in-person meetings at this time. City of Auburn Resolution number 5581 designates City of Auburn meeting locations for all regular, special, and study session meetings of the City Council and of the committees, boards, and commissions of the city as virtual locations until Washington's governor authorizes local governments to conduct in-person meetings. At this time, Council, if you would please rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. And Teresa, if you would please call roll.
Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Here.
Councilmember Baggett.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Jayraj.
Here.
Councilmember Malinga.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns. Councilmember Stearns.
I don't see him.
Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
Here. All right, Council, tonight we are going to have a little bit longer council meeting than we typically do. As you are aware, last week we were unable to hold our study session because of problems with our website and the inability for us to post the agenda and the notice for the study session for at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. And so a few of the items have been moved to future agendas, but tonight we have provided for the annual airport update and resolution 5577, as well as the Inclusive Auburn final report. And so we will begin tonight with those presentations. First up is the annual airport update and resolution number 5577, and Public Works Director Ingrid Gaub.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight we have a short presentation for you to go over a couple of items related to the airport. One of those being our 2021 Airport Board Work Plan, as well as Resolution 5577, which is actually the strategic business plan for the airport for the next 4 years that the Airport Board spent the last about year and 3 months working on. So tonight we have Deanna Clark, who is our Airport Board Chair, to do that presentation, along with Tim Mensanides, who is our Airport Manager. So with that, Deanna, Tim, if you want to share your screen and take it from there.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to come to you tonight to share our plan. As Ingrid has said, we've worked quite a bit on updating our strategic plan. And what Tim and I are going to do is Tim will work on sharing the information, and I'll focus on the strategic plan, and then Tim's going to share more specifically our work plan for this year. We're going to tag team this presentation.
Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I know that you had the more detailed strategic plan, so we're going to just hit some highlights here. Before I dive into the plan, I just want to remind everyone that the airport has an annual revenue of about $1.4 million a year. And of that, we spend about $1 million of that operating the airport. So we have about $400K a year that we'll spend on maintenance and capital improvements and that sort of thing. So that's what we're kind of focused here for. Another item I just want to remind everyone on is we do have quite a lengthy wait list for our hangars. It's about 2 years. So we do have a lot of unmet need that's out there for not only our hangars, but also it's a pretty busy airport and a reliever airport for the area. So we want to make sure that we are doing improvements, being fiscally responsible, but also servicing our tenants and our operators. Go ahead and move on to the next page, please. So in this presentation, I'm going to go through the three key results areas, or KRAs. I'll explain a little bit more of what each KRA is, and then I'll also go in and share more specifically the goals that we have for each KRA. Throughout this presentation, you'll see the diagram over there on the left-hand side. What we've tried to do is highlight the in this diagram of the airport where the KRAs are going to be targeted to improving. So you can see what areas of the airport property these KRAs will benefit. So the very first one here is all around facility and infrastructure, and we want to focus on maintaining the capability that we have and develop sustainable facility and improvements. We want to make sure that we're maintaining but also enhancing our airport operations, giving more capability to our tenants and the users of the airport. And then we also want to strengthen the airport's economic vitality. So how is the airport supporting the surrounding economy of Auburn?
And I'll add to that, speaking of numbers for the airport, the recent WashDOT Aviation Economic Impact Study came out with that our airport creates 232 direct and indirect, that's a combination of jobs, and has a $43 million economic impact to our local region.
Thank you, Tim. So the second KRA is around economic and community development. We're planning for ongoing enhanced sustainable development with our economy there. And we want to understand the market needs and opportunities as they evolve over time. And we want to maximize the development of the available space on the airport. We do have areas in the airport that we can do some additional development for. We do have plans in place for that, all within the footprint, and in addition to some areas where we're working to expand the footprint somewhat of the airport. The third KRA is around operations enhancement and expansion. So again, the sustainability of the airport business operations, cost-effective airport management and development. I do have to say the airport went under the city's control for, or responsibility for managing the daily operations of the airport, and that's been a magnificent move for us. So we want to make sure that we are continually improving on the cost effectiveness of that. And then the implementation of the airport marketing and branding plans. We want to make sure that we help our tenants and our communities understand more about the airport, what it offers, and how to get the most out of it. Next, we're going to go into the specific goals of each KRA. So again, these are spelled out in more detail in the document that has the strategic plan. But under the KRA 1, the facility and infrastructure, we're going to continue with our hangar development. I mentioned that wait list that we have for hangars. I know that you guys have already heard about the land leasing that we are embarking on with actually the city's embarking on that. We want to identify potential emerging technologies and the development of potential of the middle ramp. KRA 2, the economic and community development, we want to completing the zoning regulation updates so that we can move into actually expand the takeoff and landings that we can have around the or at the airport. And there's some zoning that we need to do, not only to do that expansion, but also perhaps for some future expansion of the property itself. We want to, again, update our marketing plan and continue to pursue partnerships and relationships around aviation and education programs. And then the KRA 3, the operation enhancement expansion. This also goes with the zoning regulations. So we want to make sure that we can change the night restrictions, identify viable instrument approaches. So this is all around getting more activity at the airport, expanding the time of day that you can use the airport, et cetera. Implementing on-airport wayfinding, exploring broadband services so that the tenants can actually create their flight plan more efficiently, et cetera, and continue to pursue the next phase of the runway extension. Those are all the focus areas that we have in this strategic plan over this time.
Thank you, Deanna. So Deanna spoke to the 4-year strategic plan, and then from that, the board and staff come up with an annual work plan, and we take that from the strategic plan. So from that, for the 2021 work plan, the first thing we're working on is updating the city code. Deanna already alluded to that. And with that are the airport rules and regulations and airport minimum standards. All 3 of these are outdated and need some upgrades. And the council may recall planning, we've already started on this. Planning had presented earlier or later in 2020 the updates of the code. So that actually goes right into the next subject of KRA 2.1 with the zoning regulation update. So the code and the zoning go hand in hand. And want to point out here that this is not just the airport zone, the LF zone directly on airport property. It's the surrounding properties from and zoning that the airport would impact. So we're talking about height regulations and noise impacts, things like that, to make the airport more compatible with the surrounding area. And the next thing, we actually have a board meeting tomorrow, and we'll be discussing this, specific board procedures and standards. After Ingrid and Deanna did some background, we don't have many board procedures and standards in place for the airport board. So we will be working on that tomorrow. And the next one is the annual review. We do this every year of our marketing focus. And this year, we'll be discussing this tomorrow as well, is with the lease of those hangars and working with the developer to get businesses in those hangars. What kind of businesses do we want in those hangars? And then the domino effect, if we have airport businesses that move to that, how to move from one spot to the airport to the new development, how do we fill those spaces as well? Then the next one is developing wayfinding improvements, just better wayfinding and signage for people who fly into the airport, who come to the airport. We've already taken steps and working with the media department in the city to do that, but continued steps to make our airport more welcoming to visitors, both who fly in and who come and visit the airport from the community. And the last one is expanding our broadband and researching internet options for our airport users. So that's bringing possible internet or Wi-Fi to the individual hangars and being able to provide that service. We currently do not have that availability. We are asking that the new development have that, but we still have to take care of the 300 other hangars on the airport. So with that, Deanna and I would welcome, or Ingrid, any questions?
Council, are there any questions? Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Deanna. Thank you, Tim, for the presentation. And I was a little bit intrigued when I read through the airport marketing plan, and there is a comment in there for looking at business development. And one of the comments is restaurant opportunities. And I'm just curious as to what the vision might be there. Is it something strictly used at the airport facility by airport clients and customers, or is it more general public, or what are the thoughts here, if any, at this time?
I'm smiling, Deputy Mayor, and Ingrid's smiling because Ingrid and I have had this discussion multiple times. So certainly it would not be just for people who fly in. All the traditional restaurants have a difficult time making it, and you have to have a significant draw from the local public. You cannot rely on a day like we had this weekend. You'd have zero business, right? So it'd be for the whole community. We walk a fine line because the FAA actually considers that non-aeronautical use. That's a whole nother subject, but we would have to make that a multi-use facility. It couldn't only be a restaurant. We'd have to have some type of aviation type use. Now we could argue that people are flying in and it's enhancing the community impact and buy into the airport, but the FAA doesn't see it that way. So that's, again, another discussion for another day.
I appreciate that. As you're talking, I get visions of a restaurant with airports hanging from the ceiling, and maybe that'll satisfy the FAA.
Yeah.
Councilmember Troutman.
Hi, Tim and Deanna, thank you for a great report. I was just wondering, I think you mentioned it before, but how many visitors or how many planes come in and out of our port, and how many do we anticipate of coming in?
We average, our number is 140,000 operations a year. That's a takeoff or a landing. So a takeoff and a landing would be 2 operations. And with that number, we're still one of the top 5 in the state. That's all airports, including SeaTac and Boeing Field and Spokane.
Wow, that's pretty nice. That's great that we're, up there at the number level. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Malinga.
Thank you. You mentioned in your strategic plan that you were looking at providing aviation educational opportunities. Can you expand a little bit on this? Are you talking about for youth, or is this for adults, or for both? Can you just expand on that? Thank you.
I'll say a little bit, and then Deanna, if you want to say a little bit. I'm open to absolutely everything. I think with the aging pilot population, we certainly need to get more youth into flying, whether it's commercial, whether it's drone operations, whether it's private pilots, general aviation. I think we've had specific discussions with forming a stronger bond with Green River and their aviation program, and we've taken steps to do that and are always looking for opportunities. So my perspective, we're open to all. We're not going to focus on one or the other. We're looking for all types of opportunities. And Deanna, if you want to say any more.
Yeah, I just want to add, we couldn't do it this year, but in 2019, and we'd like to do it on an annual basis once we get past COVID, we do a airport celebration day, and Tim and his folks have arranged for helicopter rides for youth and that sort of thing. So it's all about getting excitement about aviation and then connecting with schools. And we've even talked about getting some of the schools to maybe paint murals on, they have to be approved, but murals on some of the hangars so that you can get and generate that excitement. And also community ownership, if you will.
You, Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not certain who this question should go to, but our next report is going to be concerning our city's inclusive Auburn initiative, a report back on the work that our city is doing in this regard. I'm curious whether the strategic planning for the airport had any elements of inclusion diversity and equity elements to it. I didn't really see it evident in there, but I was wondering, is that part of your thought process at this point?
Do you want me to, you want to do that, Tim?
Yeah, absolutely. And this, we didn't point this out, but this is something that's been added into our goals or budget goals that we planned earlier for the biennial budget in spring. And would there be anything else to add specifically for the strategic plan, Ingrid or Deanna?
Yeah, so I mean, we definitely are focused on diversity. When you're looking at the airport and the strategic business plan, we're really looking at how do we get diverse businesses in there that serve that aviation need. So we have the added control in there, if you will, of what FAA will let us do on the field. And so it's really kind of balancing, trying to find the right businesses for the airport to serve the needs of our customers and our visitors, as well as try to get some diversity on that field.
And I think there are probably a lot of opportunities for diversity, inclusion, and equity in potential training sessions that are out there, by identifying everyone in our community that might have an interest in flight.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of the airport day that Deanna had mentioned. That is really geared towards trying to reach out to the community and get them exposed to aviation and get them thinking of that as a potential field for young youth to consider and go into, and open that field from what has been the typical folks that go into aviation, so that you can broaden and get a more diverse background in aviation than what exists today.
Yeah,
did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Director Galb for that answer. I think Councilmember Malinga, talking about the youth involvement, we could really get a double benefit, I think, if we're, intentionally recruiting, kids of color that could perhaps see a whole different future for themselves. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stearns.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. I had two questions. One is, do we have like any ideas of maybe selling the naming rights to the field? And then secondly, is there any serious consideration down the road to burying the overhead transmission lines, and how much would that cost?
So I'll answer your first question. I won't say it can't be done. Our airport is unofficially named after Dick Scobie, as you may be aware. Changing the name from Auburn Municipal to whatever we wanted to call it is not an easy task, but it could be done. It could be a discussion. And but then I would think it would naturally, we would want to try to name it after Dick Scobie. And then to answer your question, second question, yes. Ingrid's again smiling because this is something we hear from our pilots. Since I've been in high school, I've seen this as an issue, right? So what's the number that's been thrown out there, Ingrid? It's hundreds of millions of dollars to bury those.
Yeah, since those are high-powered transmission lines, the cost to underground those probably will cost anywhere between 30 and 100 million. I don't know that we've ever done an actual estimate for that, but certainly beyond the capability for the airport to fund on its own.
And to add to that, our approach lighting and our slopes to the airport have accommodated that. And I mean, it works in the current environment, but I'm wholeheartedly with you. If we could underground those, that would be a very nice upgrade to the airport.
Thank you.
Councilmember Baggett, did you have another question?
Yes, Your Honor. Just basically, it kind of dovetails in with Councilmember Stern's question, but I noticed while I was reading some of the materials, we were talking about obstructions and eliminating some of these obstructions. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. So we had a more precise survey, an AGIS survey of the airport, and with that flagged about 33 obstructions. And this is something my staff and I have been working on for the past 2 years. I would like to say that hopefully by next week, the end of next week, it will be done. And those obstructions are currently not allowing our instrument approach. So that's the approach that you fly solely on basis of reference to the instruments in your aircraft. And inclement weather, you fly through a cloud and then fly an instrument approach and POW the airports right there if you break out of the clouds. We cannot fly that instrument approach because of those obstructions right now at night. So, and this dovetails with the coding and zoning discussion and being able to work with these obstructions, because I had to contact 10 different landowners and work with them on either cutting down trees or putting red obstruction lights on their obstructions. So that's specifically what that project's and what that language in there is mentioning.
This would also cover the night landings and things of that nature as well, right?
Yes. So once those have been mitigated, which, like I said, I hope is by the end of next week, then we get the approach back at night, and those structures will have red lights on them.
Good. Thank you, Tim.
And just to clarify, so those obstructions are a slight penetration into the air surface as determined by FAA. So it might be a tree that's grown a couple more feet and therefore now it's penetrating that air surface, or it might be a business owner who put up a flagpole that's now penetrating that air surface, or other things like that. So they're not necessarily huge obstructions, but they penetrate into the air surface by at least a foot or more.
Thank you, Ingrid.
Council, any other questions for Deanna and Tim? All right. Well, Deanna, Tim, thank you both very, very much for your passion and care of our airport. And we look forward to more great things out there. And thank you. I know there are a couple of the board members who are watching and have logged in. So thanks to all of you for your passion for aviation and your willingness to serve the city of Auburn.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is the Inclusive Auburn Final Report. Racing to Equity Consulting Group has finalized their agency report and will be presenting tonight to our city council. And I believe presenting tonight will be our own Brenda Goodson Moore, our DEI program manager, and also Bernardo Ruiz, who, council, I know you are all familiar with. And I will turn it over to Brenda and Bernardo.
Good evening. Teresa, could I just ask you to move Caitlin Hoover and Dr. Norma Zavala over? They'll be part of the presentation.
And Anita Morales, she's teaching right now at UW. She will be joining us as well.
Yes, one moment.
Thank you.
Okay, Brenda, they're ready.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, council members. Good evening, Mayor Backus. It is our pleasure to be here with you today to conclude our contract by doing a formal presentation of our scientific findings of what the vibrant people of Auburn have recommended to do in terms of advancing racial equity and social justice to honor, value, and dignify the humanity of each one of your residents. Happy New Year to everyone. We hadn't seen each other since December, so I hope everything is going well with you. And Kaylin, if you could please bring up the PowerPoint. And again, I want to introduce Dr. Norma Zavala. She's a member of our team, and she supported the development and implementation of a couple focus groups, and she also supported the writing of the report. And Kaylin we say that she is the wing underneath our Racing to Equity wings, and she also has done a phenomenal job in project managing the work with the city of Auburn and also supporting with the report. And Anita Morales, when she joined us, she was instrumental in performing interviews and focus groups and also in survey design. Next slide, please, Kelly. And by the way, I'm Bernardo Ruiz, and I'm the CEO and principal consultant for the Racing to Equity Consulting Group in Seattle, Washington. Could somebody please unmute yourselves or mute yourself and do a land acknowledgement, read aloud for us?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
First, we want to begin by acknowledging that we are on Indigenous land, the traditional territories of the Muckleshoot and Coast Salish people, who since time immemorial have taken care of, hunted, fished, gathered, and buried their ancestors on these lands. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and we honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water.
And I would like to take a moment to thank the Muckleshoot tribe for allowing us to be on this land by providing this report. And we honor that they have been good ancestors of this land and have taken care of it really well. And we hope that their humanity is also honored, valued, and dignified through this work. Next slide, please, Kelly. We want to start with a big thank you. The Racing to Equity Consulting Group would like to express heartfelt gratitude to the community of the city of Auburn. We want to thank the staff, the residents, the directors, the city council, the mayor. This is a promise made, a promise kept by being good stewards of taxpayers' dollars, by highlighting the resounding collective support and progress of advancing racial equity and social justice in the city of Auburn so everybody benefits. And this report was made possible because of the dedication, support, and resources, human, financial, and timely resources contributed by the community collectively. We're thankful that we had this partnership with the city of Auburn. Today it concludes, and we're confident that you will take it to the next level. And we see you as an ally and co-conspirator as a city government to advance racial equity and social justice. So every member of your community is honored, valued, and dignified, and also thrive. Next slide, please. This work initiated by the passage of Resolution 5427, the Inclusive Auburn Initiative, which has three main goals. The first one is to eliminate systemic causes of disparities, racial and otherwise. We not only look at racial inequities, we also look at other inequities that manifest in negative impacts for the residents of the vibrant city of Auburn. We want to promote inclusion and belonging and create opportunities for full participation for every resident in city government. And that's what we know research tells us that true democracies are made of, when everybody has an opportunity to contribute, and at the same time, everybody has an opportunity to be held responsible and accountable for the well-being of the community. And the last one is that we have a moral imperative to reduce and eventually eliminate the disparities of outcomes in the vibrant community of the city of Auburn. Next slide, Kelly. And today we're gonna provide a report on an overview of key findings and recommendations that were brought to us by city staff members, by community members, by the Auburn Police Department, and by leadership through several surveys, focus groups, and other types of research. Next slide, please. What we wanted to highlight in the demographics, as you know, it is that it has continually keep on growing in terms of diverse, ethnically and linguistically diverse residents in the city of Auburn. This is completely different to what it looked like even 8 years ago, and it continues to grow. So it's not that this is something that should shock us, because it has been incrementally increasing and it will continue to do so. And so this is a demonstration that currently 38% of your residents are Black, Indigenous, or other people of color that also need to be honored, valued, and dignified by city government. Next slide, please. And these are the staff demographics. And as you can see, there is quite a lot of work to do in terms of reflect the city staff to the city demographics in terms of residents. We know it is a work in progress, and we're confident that the work that the mayor, the city council, and Candice as the human resources director is embarking on will help you in the long run have more balanced demographics that represents the diversity of the community that you serve. Next slide, please. And we wanted to start by giving you accolades, and Brenda and I would tag team with some of the things that we want to highlight, but we want to make sure that everybody understands that is either listening to us or watching us, that you have a strong foundation from which you can edify long-lasting and sustainable racial equity and social justice. And that this report is just a continuation of the great work that we started together in 2019 when the City of Auburn council members approved overwhelmingly the resolution 5427 Inclusive Auburn Initiative. At that time, that resolution approved the contract for our partnership with the City of Auburn to support leadership development and also capacity building and the creation of this report and drafting of a policy and the racial equity tool to ensure that we have sustainable ways that are formal to advance racial equity and social justice, so it's not left to happenstance. A huge investment by the City of Auburn by providing the city directors with 48 hours of racial equity professional development that also included several aspects of leadership development like adaptive leadership and the leadership challenge, and also how to identify psychological safety and how to implement tools and strategies to advance racial equity and social justice. And the mayor also participated as a member of that team that went through the training. We had an opportunity to do expansive community engagement. We need to say a huge thank you and give accolades to the community-facing work group that came together under our collective ideas of how can we have a team that is cohesive in the City of Auburn that provides community engagement. And one of our recommendations and opportunities would be that you continue to formally engage with that community-facing group and provide them with a formal charge to continue strengthening and fostering collaboration and trust with the community. And I think Brenda was going to talk about the hosting of community outreach recruitment events.
Okay, so first of all, my name is Brenda Goodson Moore, and I am the city's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program Manager. And since I've started my role, I started in that role, which was August 2020. I have had the pleasure of working with city leadership and our consultant, Mr. Ruiz, within the Inclusive Auburn Initiative. I am excited to review and discuss the results of our Inclusive Auburn report this evening. And just kind of adding on to what Bernardo was just talking about, we did have COVID-19 presented quite the challenge for the city to connect with the community with this initiative. So we do have some significant plans going forward in 2021 to engage the community, starting with focus groups and developing a racial equity committee to work with internal staff to review city policies with a racial equity lens. Some of the other accomplishments that we did in 2020 were completing a community survey, and you will see the results of that survey within this report that Bernardo is going to present this evening. We have initiated quite a few things in human resources. We started out enhancing our hiring practices. We have we've increased access to higher volumes of candidates using pre-screening interviews, job competency tests prior to traditional 1-hour interviews. We've customized our recruitment outreach plans for job vacancies, reaching out to culturally specific organizations to assist with recruitment of underrepresented populations. We've updated our external job postings to reflect the city's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we have heard from some of the hiring directors here at the city that candidates who've come in to interview have expressed the reason for applying at the City of Auburn. What attracted them to the position was the city's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that was very positive feedback. There's quite a bit of work going on in the city, although we have been working remotely, and we are just starting to really plan on implementing training for the staff in 2021, foundational racial equity training. There are departments within the city who have already implemented this into their work. Community development, and more specifically, human services, the Human Services Division has included a $1,000 diversity and equity training stipend with each of the larger human services grants that we provide to nonprofit agencies. There's equity language going into the housing assistance or the housing action plan that the city is currently developing. So a lot of this work has already started, but going into 2021 and finishing out the year 2020, we will be engaging more directly with staff to provide that training and to continue enhancing the Inclusive Auburn initiative.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Kellen. And Brenda already mentioned a couple of the accomplishments and accolades, but I wanted to highlight that the directors and management for the whole city of Auburn completed a survey that indicated whether there was alignment between the mission, vision, and values of the city of Auburn and their actions and outcomes. And so today we're going to be talking about those findings, and also wanted to highlight that we had 32 hours of professional development to the City Council that was specifically designed on national best practices to advance governing for racial equity, and also to enhance engagement and participation for the City of Auburn. One of the things that we wanted to highlight is that there is a draft of a citywide racial equity policy that we invite the City Council and staff to review deeply and implement, so approve and implement, because that's a foundation for the work. And we have noticed that when cities do that, this work is taken a lot more seriously because it becomes part of the DNA of city government. Next slide, please, Kevin. And Brenda reviewed all these accomplishments by the City of Auburn, specifically the Human Resource Department. I don't know if you want to add anything to this, Brenda?
I didn't really discuss the blind screening for employment applications, but we are currently doing that. I think we covered all of these.
Okay.
Brenda, do you want to explain the blind screening, maybe just a...
Oh, okay. So that is where when we receive applications in, we remove any type of identifying information such as college, graduation dates, any type of, I believe it's addressing,
name,
anything that would identify whether we were going to be selecting a male or female or anything that would indicate their age, just to provide a more equitable start for all applicants, remove bias.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Caitlin. And Brenda also talked about the stipend for the diversity and equity training, for the human service grants. And one of the things that we're going to be highlighting later on is the implementation of a racial equity tool, which is in review or probably development with the city council and the city directors right now. And our recommendation is that it is implemented in 2021 and 2022 more systemically. Next slide, please. So the methodology, we use scientific methodology actually from all universities, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, that have a program on social scientific research. And we use historical data that was provided to us by the City of Auburn directors and staff. And they provided us with charts and past evaluation reports and human resources documents that we used to build a report. The most important parts of our research were qualitative data interviews and also quantitative. And we had several ways to gather the data. We had the inclusive Auburn comprehensive value statement was completed by directors. We had the inclusive Auburn staff survey, and we also have the inclusive Auburn community survey, as well as focus groups and interviews. Next slide, please. So in order for you to understand the findings and for the people who are watching us, we are aligning our findings with national best practice. And I was really pleased to see that the City of Auburn had joined the Government Alliance for Racial Equity, which actually were the ones who did the research study on how to dismantle systems of oppression and institutionalized racism. And the studies from the Government Alliance for Racial Equity and the University of California at Berkeley recognize that there are three main things that organizations need to do in order to address, identify, and eliminate inadvertent systems that are providing inequitable outcomes for residents in cities and municipalities. And the first part is normalizing the conversation. We in the United States have been taught not to talk about race or racial equity or racial inequities, as we believe that that is only the topic for bad people, and that because we're good people, we should not talk about it. And therefore, if we don't talk about it, it becomes a taboo that is never addressed. And if it is not addressed, it's not normalized. So the first part of our findings are in the normalizing part, and then organizing. Brenda talked about it. We, because of COVID, could not put a City of Auburn racial equity team together that would serve as the internal consultants to departments to create specific plans to advance racial equity and eliminate racial and other inequities that are advertent or inadvertent in city government. And then the operationalization, which is a really important part of the national best practice, because it provides us with tools and strategies that become part of the DNA of the organization, which helps us perpetuate the work in a sustainable and long-lasting way. Independently of who's the mayor, who's in city council, these tools will help us ensure that they are part of the work that directors and other leaders throughout the city do in order to ensure that they don't inadvertently advance inequities or oppression or marginalization. Next slide. And so these are the barriers that we found to normalizing. There is currently not a citywide definition of racial equity and social justice. When we asked people what they thought racial equity was, we got as many responses, as many different responses as people we asked. And so our invitation is to ensure that you put together a team of community members and a team of city employees and leaders that come up with a definition for what is racial equity and social justice at the city of Auburn. What does it sound like? What does it look like? What does it feel like? We also found out that there is lack of clarity around the intent of implementation of the plan for Inclusive Auburn initiative, as people did not understand, many people did not understand why we were engaging in such an initiative when they never experienced any oppression or marginalization themselves. And so some people didn't understand that. There is lack of professional development opportunities within the city of Auburn, designed specifically to build the capacity of city of Auburn staff to gain an understanding and a shared analysis of how systemic oppression has been embedded inadvertently or advertently in city government throughout the years and decades. One of the things that we heard loud and clear in every single interview, focus group, and survey is that the city of Auburn has very, very low staffing levels. And that leaves people with too much on their plates. And when we go deeply into the findings and recommendations, we'll address how to support that work. And then lack of collective understanding and the benefit and necessity of implementing the Inclusive Auburn initiative was a barrier to normalizing. Next slide, please. This is something that I wanted to highlight, and it was a barrier to organizing because we could not continue meeting with the community-facing work group. But one of the things that we want to recommend is that you continue supporting that group so that they continue advancing engagement and fostering trust and collaboration with the community, so it not only lies into one person's responsibility. City of Auburn staff is unclear about the services they provide to residents of color and how historically marginalized populations have been burdened by some of the lack of opportunities and supports that they have received from the City of Auburn. City of Auburn leaders could not currently identify the gaps in services, opportunities, and supports, so they could eliminate racial and other inequities and advance the Inclusive Auburn initiative. Not every city department has set specific, measurable, attainable, and results-oriented and timely-bound goals or benchmarks to advance racial equity and social justice. The City of Auburn leaders need to continue gaining more in-depth knowledge in recognizing cultural sustaining practices or lack thereof, so they can themselves become more equitable leaders and have culturally sustaining leadership practices. Disaggregated data is not currently available. We did have a meeting with Candice and Brenda, and they notify us that you are hiring or you just hired a person that would help you with that. But one of the things that we have found throughout our research and our experience is that cities that disaggregate the data have a better chance to eliminating racial and other inequities, because the data is the foundation for them to act. So it's not somebody else's opinion, but it's black and white mathematical fact that needs to be addressed. And then the creation and implementation of a City of Auburn team does not appear to be at the top priority for the City of Auburn currently, and it might be because of COVID or because of low staffing levels as well. Next slide, please, Kayla. The City of Auburn does not appear to have a strategic plan. We could not find any evidence that there was a strategic plan for the City of Auburn. Even if you don't have one for racial equity work, the setting a specific strategy that provides a common language and a strategic direction for the City of Auburn will be extremely beneficial. And we're inviting you to use this report as a foundation for your strategic plan if you are thinking about engaging in that process in the near future. The City of Auburn currently lacks the systems or capacity to regularly disaggregate data. We asked different departments whether they thought or they believed or they had evidence that racial inequities were not taking place, and we could not find any evidence that they knew that racial inequities were not taking place. because of the services they provide. While the City of Auburn has created strategies for progress within the Inclusive Auburn initiative, interview respondents were unable to identify specific strategies or how they were being implemented. They did say, however, that their directors were talking about it, but when they asked their directors, or when we asked them, what were some of those specific strategies and how do you see your role in implementing those strategies, we were not able to receive any responses from people, as they communicated to us that those strategies are not being developed yet. The City of Auburn does not have a dedicated budget line item to support the implementation of the Inclusive Auburn initiative. We can tell you that the initiative does not exist if it doesn't have a formal budget line item that goes beyond just having Brenda as part of the staff, but also that provides the, the departments and, Brenda's office with the opportunity to hire staff and to bring people over to either provide presentations or keynote addresses or to provide trainings for city departments in specific ways that they can advance racial equity within the context of their work. The City of Auburn does not have a systemic approach to engaging with ethnically and linguistically diverse populations. We found out that you do have one or two people that have extremely done a phenomenal job in building relationships and advancing the work to foster trust and collaboration with ethnically and linguistically diverse communities. And at the same time, that is a very dangerous thing to have only be owned by one or two staff. As we were doing our work to engage with communities, it seemed like those staff were gatekeepers of engagement, and we were not able to reach out to some populations because we did not have access to them. No evidence of mandatory cultural sustaining professional development for the City of Auburn staff. I know Mayor Backus had a brilliant idea of having a yearly professional development day. And I know because of COVID, you were not able to do it. But in order for you to be serious about the work, this must become part of the roles and responsibilities of every single staff and family member of the City of Auburn. And because this work is non-mandatory, it's perceived as an add-on, and add-ons in a time where you're experiencing extremely low staffing levels can be ignored because it's not a crucial thing for the city government. When we know that that's one of the foundations for city government, and when we read the Constitution, that's one of the things that was implemented in the writing, that we create opportunities for life, liberty, and the pursuit of justice for every person that we come in contact with. And we did not find evidence that there is more than one job description that clearly aligns responsibilities for implementing the Inclusive Auburn initiative. Next slide, please. So these are some opportunities for progress. And you should be really happy about this, that a great majority of stakeholders agree that ensuring the advancement of the Inclusive Auburn initiative success should be a top priority for city leaders and staff. So you have the backing of city staff members and city residents who provide us with their feedback. And so this should give you the political capital that you need. So when you have, a couple people that say that, why are we doing this? This is a waste of taxpayers' dollars, that you can state confidently that staff and community members say that this is a top priority and that it is adequate and appropriate that the City of Auburn implements the Inclusive Auburn initiative. The systemic support of the initiative provided by city leadership is great importance for the lasting success. When we had the opportunity to work with city directors and the city council members, we could honestly vouch for their commitment to advance racial equity and social justice within their leadership practice. Another thing that we found out is that the City of Auburn staff with whom we had the pleasure of interviewing and interacting with and doing focus groups and responding to the Auburn staff survey, that they are very professional and they take their responsibilities of being public servants very, very seriously. And then all stakeholders would better understand expectations, priorities, and procedures if they were consistently and clearly applied across all city departments. And that wasn't only about racial equity and social justice, that was operationally. We found out that some departments had different expectations for some people, and some other departments have different expectations, and they were not uniformly or structurally identified and operated and operationalized in the city of Auburn. Next slide, please. The city of Auburn has developed leadership strategies for incorporating racial equity into the work. We did hear from a couple of leaders, and when we did the work with the city council, every session was focused on what are some of the ways that you can incorporate racial equity and social justice strategies into city governing. There is a collective agreement among the city of Auburn staff and residents that the city of Auburn's initiatives, inclusive Auburn initiatives implementation, should start from within the city of Auburn leadership and staff. There was a lot of feedback from city residents that informed us that they believed and they will strengthen the trust and collaboration once they hear more from city leaders and staff about how serious they are about implementing the Inclusive Auburn initiative. And it is necessary for City of Auburn residents, staff, and administration to share their stories as people of color and have their experiences believed and being validated. So because 82% of the staff identify themselves as white, and the great majority informed us that they have not been the recipients of discrimination, marginalization, or oppression against them, against their persons. They sometimes did not believe the stories of how people of color experience the city of Auburn. And Ijeoma Luo, who is a local writer, and she is actually world-renowned, states in her book, So You Want to Talk About Race, that the more we allow the staff and residents of color to tell their stories and how they are either positively or negatively impacted by city government, that helps normalize the conversation and validate their experiences. Because what we heard during interviews is that people said, because I haven't experienced it, I don't know if that is true or not, because I have never been the recipient of that. And so when we interviewed staff of color, they definitely told us that there are inequities and other types of oppression taking place at the city that and the experiences are not being validated. Next slide, please. These are the recommendations, and again, they are presented in the 3 categories of the national best practice of normalizing, organizing, and operationalizing. Next slide. So to normalize the conversation around advancing and ensuring the success of the Inclusive Auburn initiative, we need to ensure that it becomes a shared and collective responsibility for each City of Auburn team member. So some people don't see themselves as the guardians of racial equity and social justice, and this initiative will only be successful if it becomes a collective responsibility. So we had conversations around implementing key performance indicators in job descriptions and evaluations, so we can ensure that this work gets done in a way that advances the 3 goals of the Inclusive Auburn initiative. Another recommendation is to hire and retain leaders and staff with a shared racial equity analysis. So one of the major things that we have been mentioning today, and you can read in the report, is that as you continue hiring people, you do not necessarily to specifically hire Black, Indigenous, or people of color, although that would be best practice. but that you do hire people that have racial equity analysis and understands how systems of inequity have been formed in city government. So when they do their work in the context of the roles and responsibilities, they apply that lens so they do not inadvertently exacerbate oppression, discrimination, and marginalization. One of the key things that we are recommending the City of Auburn to do is to provide adaptive leadership professional development that really helps people understand and recognize the difference between technical solutions and adaptive solutions. And basically, adaptive leadership is about identifying what is it within our locus of control that we can either solve with the current know-how, with the current budget, with the current authority. That would be a technical solution. And racial equity work is adaptive because one of the main tenets is that you must involve the people most impacted by the inequities to be part of the solution. And building relationships and ensuring that the community is part of the advancement of the Inclusive Auburn Initiative is crucial for ensuring that this initiative is successful, long-lasting, and sustainable. One of the key things that we wanted to do, and we did hear that it has happened sporadically, is to make a public declaration of the City of Auburn commitment to advance Inclusive Auburn Initiative. And a way to do that could be done certainly easily via your website, in which you have a commitment that is backed up by the mayor, the city council, and directors on their commitment to advance the City of Auburn and making a declaration of why this is important. We also had the opportunity to provide you with a draft ordinance that has language to make such a public declaration. But it's important that, more specifically, that people hear from you, Mayor Backus, and from the City Council in terms of your commitment and how you have declared that this is one of the top priorities. And as you have said constantly, Mayor Backus, if it is not the top priority in our lifetime, it's pretty close second to ensuring that we leave the world a better place than how we found it. Next slide, please. We are recommending that you engage ethnically and linguistically diverse residents in informed decision making, and you create avenues and pathways for City of Auburn staff to collaborate and engage with the community that has not had their voice being heard. We know because of COVID right now, we have several barriers to making this happen, but this is an invitation for you to start designing how this would look like to ensure that everybody in the City of Auburn who resides in the vibrant community has an opportunity to participate in city government and at the same time be held responsible for the well-being of each and every person. Strengthen and formalize the work of the community-facing work group to advance racial equity and social justice. When we had, I think it was 3 or 4 sessions with them, the brilliance and the innovation, the creativity that they brought to the table was really appreciated and was recognized by every single person that participated in that community-facing work group. And so we are recommending that you formalize it, you strengthen it, you provide a budget for it, and you support it. And then another part is continue to grow and develop the Office of Racial Equity and Inclusion. You took a great first step in hiring Brenda, and she's learned a lot in a very short period of time, which shows that she's not only a quick study, but extremely committed to and passionate about ensuring the well-being of each and every resident in the City of Auburn. But she's not going to be able to do it by herself. And if you really want to accomplish the goals of the Inclusive Auburn Initiative, you must develop supports for her. And when it's time to do the professional development for citywide staff, Brenda is not going to be able to provide those services or those supports to every single department. And so having a staff that really is knowledgeable and supports this initiative will be crucial for its success. And develop and maintain partnerships with other city and governmental agencies. You have a couple of cities and municipalities that are less than 35 minutes away that are recognized nationally in their work and could really help you understand and navigate in a very efficient way some of the things that you can do to really become a beacon of light in the nation, which we believe you can. And we heard loud and clear in several opportunities that the city council wants to become a beacon of light in this work. And so the couple examples are the city of Seattle and the King County. And those two city government and municipalities have really been at the forefront nationally and internationally of how city government should implement policies, practices, tools, procedures, and implement it in job descriptions, recruitment, hiring, retention, and interviews, how to advance racial equity and social justice. Both of those cities have an office of either civil rights or racial equity and social justice, and there is a lot to learn from them. And you have them only, less than half an hour away, and they have both externalized that they want to partner with you. Create a system for the disaggregation and proper use of data to identify and eliminate access and opportunity gaps for residents. We are strongly recommending that a portion of the person that you hire, that you will hire, that will be your data person, that is focused on data disaggregation. So you have a better understanding of where the communities that need the most support and that need the most access to government services and programs so they can thrive, as I know that that's the desire of the mayor and the city council. Next slide, please. And operationalizing is develop a comprehensive urban strategic plan. So I mentioned what are some of the advantages of doing that. It actually helps you focus your priorities, creates a common language, aligns a strategy, and streamlines a cohesive action plan to advance the goals of the city of Auburn. And within those goals, we hope that you include the creation of Inclusive Auburn Initiative Plan. Create a City of Auburn Initiative strategy and implementation plan to support the advancement of racial equity and inclusion. One of the things that we really want to emphasize is the implementation of and the systemic use of a racial equity tool. We know that you're going to be working in finalizing that tool with the support of staff, because they're going to be the ones presenting it to the city council, but also the city council should be part of that conversation, as they will analyze and ensure that the racial equity tool presented to them is done in a way that advances racial equity and social justice. And what we have found through cities nationwide is that when that tool is implemented systemically and becomes part of the culture, inequities are reduced drastically. We want to also recommend that the city of Auburn implements a racial equity policy and develop a procedure for its implementation. And once it becomes a policy, it becomes part of the DNA of the organization, of the city government, and people take this work a great deal more seriously because it's part of policies, practice, and procedures. And then build a leadership development pipeline to create a succession plan to ensure that the city leadership is reflective of its resident population. And we now know that the city leadership and the directors are very homogeneous right now. And as opportunities arise and positions open, we ask you to seriously take into consideration the succession planning to ensure that people with similar lived experiences to the residents of the city of Auburn, the people who are ethnically and linguistically diverse, they have the opportunity to participate in city government. So we erase any inadvertent inequities that have been implemented systemically throughout the decades. Next slide, please. And this is the work plan continue, and Brenda is gonna talk about the things that you are planning for 2021.
Thank you, Bernardo. So after we just learned about some of the recommendations that Racing to Equity had for us, we can kind of look at the plan that we have going forward into 2021. We are going to be preparing and sending out a request for proposal for diversity, inclusion, and racial equity training. And that will be to continue the adaptive leadership training that Bernardo was talking about and foundational training for all city staff. We, as a city, we will be going forward, we're going to be developing a city leadership anti-racist equity and inclusion statement. As Bernardo mentioned, was one of the recommendations that they had. We will be developing a racial equity team development and training, a racial equity tool or lens, some people know that by a lens, training for the team that will, for all staff, but we will be rolling that training out to the racial equity team that will be first reviewing policies and projects and things going forward to council. We will be, Bernardo mentioned that they drafted a citywide equity policy for us to review and implement. So we'll be finishing that, working together to kind of working off his recommendations and implementing that policy. We will begin department level. We've already started department level policy review and development, but as we bring the rest of the staff along in their training and understanding, they'll be able to properly assist in the review and development of our department policies. We will be coordinating a 2021 all staff keynote, and what's a huge priority for us is that community engagement piece in educating the community and including them as part of the Auburn initiative. And we're going to start that with conducting focus groups that we weren't able to do during the survey part of the process, and inviting them to participate in our committee for racial equity. We're also in the process of, as a city, developing a strategic plan. So that's good that that's one of the recommendations, because that's already underway.
And council, that is what the council workshop or will be later on this year. There will be probably a couple of remote meetings for us, and then we are hoping that mid-year we will be able to do an in-person workshop.
That would be great. Oh, I just mentioned that. Employment interview panels will be representative of the diversity of the city's workforce and the community we serve. We have already started increasing diversity on interview panels and internal, external evaluators. We hope to add community members to that process as well. We're developing specific behaviorally based interview questions that will be used to evaluate candidate competencies in the areas of diversity, inclusion, and equity citywide. Managers with screening, hiring responsibilities, and individuals evaluating applicants or applicant materials will receive training on cultural awareness and other equity training. And interview panelists will receive training on implicit bias and discriminatory practices prior to beginning interviews. So those are some of the things that we've started and that we will be implementing throughout 2021.
And, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And one of the recommendations that Bernardo was talking about, which was the disaggregated data, we're going to be expanding reporting and metrics on diversity and hiring statistics as an internal audit to measure effectiveness of strategies. And we've already been working with our GIS department to kind of look at developing an equity index. There's a lot of other factors that are going into that, but that is something that we do have planned for the future. And recently, our Parks and Recreation Department joined the Seattle King County State of Play Coalition that engages policy advocacy programs, research designed to increase play equity and remove barriers to sport and play community opportunities. And these are just some of the different ways that other departments are also working on equity within their divisions.
Thank you, Brenda. And before we go to the next slide, a couple things that I just remember that I wanted to mention is something that actually we had discussions with Candice and Brenda in terms of engaging with other cities, because it wasn't only with the city of Seattle and King County, but also with the Valley cities and other cities, outside the region, like the city of Linwood, that has done good work in terms of advancing racial equity and social justice. In the Valley cities, you would be at the forefront, and people could really learn from what you have learned thus far in these 2 years that you have engaged in this program and in this initiative. And the other thing that I really wanted to highlight is that it was recommended that the city of Auburn strengthens their relationship with the Muckleshoot tribe. And a way to do that would be to implement a liaison position that is housed in City Hall that works very closely with Brenda and the mayor in how to have government-to-government relationships strengthened, as we know the Muckleshoot tribe is a sovereign nation in this region, and we're on their land, and it would be a great opportunity to show the nation how you can not only coexist, but really foster trust and collaboration and strengthen partnerships in a way that really honors the contributions of city government and the contribution of tribal government for the benefit and well-being of each one of the residents of the beautiful and vibrant city of Auburn. Next slide, please, Caitlin. And so in conclusion, we wanted to say that we're inspired to share the hopelessness shown by the city leadership and staff, and the fact that hundreds and hundreds of people are ready for progress and understand that it will take individual as well as collective action and learning and being humble and being authentic and with having a specific strategy and taking decisive action to eliminate racial and other inequities. And we know that you will strengthen your commitment and your willingness to offer the necessary support, vision, strategies, funding, and courage to lead for racial equity at the forefront of each person's job responsibilities, and more specifically with city directors and leaders at the city of Auburn. And I want to quote Mayor Backus before we hand it to questions from the city council and city leadership. You have said several times, Mayor Backus, that this is one of the most, if not the most important issues of our time. I know that you and your staff mentioned when we went through a strategy on recognizing the historical inequities that have taken place, not only in the country, but in the city of Auburn and the region, that you said that you want to be a beacon of light and you don't want to be used as an example of what could have happened but didn't happen. And so we believe in your leadership and the leadership of the city council, and we're confident and hopeful that under your leadership, your cabinet and the city council, that you will advance the Inclusive Auburn initiative to honor, value, and dignify the humanity of each and every resident and city staff member. And now we're opening it for questions.
Council, do you have any questions? No questions? Oh, Councilmember Stearns.
Yeah, wow. Thanks, Bernardo and Brenda. That was pretty good report. Yeah, it's just so great to see, what we're doing to promote racial equity in our city. So I had a question. What are the recommendations you have for the council? But what are concrete steps that the council can do?
Thank you. That's a great question. The first step is to approve the racial equity policy. Use the ordinance that we drafted for you. You can revise it, or you can do a rewrite if you want to, but that's both the policy and the ordinance are based on national best practice. And we believe that those are huge steps that you can take to show the commitment and also to foster trust and collaboration within the city staff and also within the community at the city of Auburn. One of the things also that specifically we're recommending for the city council is the implementation, the systemic implementation of the racial equity tool. We believe that that's a way to ensure that we observe, interpret, and then intervene in making governance decisions to ensure that we will not inadvertently or advertently advance or exacerbate inequities or oppression, marginalization, and discrimination. And that equity tool, the more people use it, the more familiar they become, and the easier it becomes for people to use. And once we have that disaggregated data, that's a huge component of the equity tool implementation. And for you to know and understand what would be either the benefits or the negative impacts of an initiative or a programmatic proposal would be crucial for the city to sustainably and strategically and intentionally advance racial equity and social justice.
Great, thanks. So those are two things. When do you think, or do you think that we will be applying the racial equity lens to the budgeting process? Would that be in 2022 or 2023? Or
my recommendation as your consultant would be that you start on 2022. You take 2021 to really build a robust tool that everybody understands and everybody uses, and they have a year to practice it. So we're in the first quarter of the year, and you have a great opportunity to really practice it and do it in a way that is psychologically safe way for staff to do it. And then for you to become more aware of what to look for as a city council and ask the right questions when city staff brings you the proposals and recommendations for budget. But in order to do a good job and really advance the Inclusive Auburn initiative, it will take about a year of practice for you to look at the budget in a way that would advance racial equity and social justice. And my recommendation would be that you start implementing it systemically in 2022.
Great. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Stearns, that would most likely be as we are looking at the 2023-2024 budget, because that will come to you in 2022, since we are on a biennial budget schedule in the city. But that doesn't mean that there won't be opportunities along the way to utilize that tool as well on budget amendments and things. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to comment. I want to thank the Mayor Backus for her leadership on this. Brenda, thank you so much. And Bernardo and Caitlin spent a lot of time with you. But I think that the benefits of the time we've spent together will pay out over the next several years. I know that just within this council, I think we've become a closer group of people serving this city, and it can't do anything but make for a better city. I think that sometimes we get confused and attribute things to the wrong factors. For example, what happened January 6th. I think we shouldn't be looking at party or that sort of thing. We need to look at the insidious nature of racism as a chief contributor to those sorts of things that happen in our community, anyway, in our country. I just really want to express my appreciation for everybody that's working on this and the work that we're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Brown. And I just need to thank Anita and Dr. Zavala and Kaylin for their continuous support and work and their dedication and passion to ensure that we really impact the world in a positive way. And we are confident that our work that we did together will leave that legacy.
Thank you. Councilmember Malenga.
Thank you, Mayor Backus. My question is about the strategic plan. I saw on your slide that it showed that it is in progress. And I want to know, is that something, Bernardo, that you're drafting, or is it something that City of Auburn employees are drafting? And then with that strategic plan, will the city council be able to have input on it before it's finalized? And what status are where we at with the strategic plan? Thank you.
Councilmember Malenga, that's what I was talking about. That will be a council retreat, council workshop.
Okay, I missed that. Sorry.
The strategic plan.
Okay, thank you.
And we're not the ones supporting the development of that plan. I think it's another consulting group. But we also want to encourage that you as city council members are really engaged not only in one day, but in the whole process, and that you also provide opportunities for the community to have their voice included as part of the strategy to create a more vibrant city of Auburn.
Other questions, comments? Councilmember Stearns.
Oh, thank you, Your Honor. I just got a little bit of confusion. There's a racial equity plan, and then that's what we're going to be meeting on later in the year of retreat. But there's also a racial equity policy.
Now, the strategic plan, Councilmember Stearns, is overall for the city that will definitely include a significant amount of racial equity and social justice. But if you will, it will be more a business plan for the city.
Okay. But is there also a policy? Because that was in the report.
Yeah, so we drafted, as part of our contract, we drafted a policy based on national best practices that we submitted to the City of Auburn early in the month, along with an ordinance that is also based on national best practice that is, almost already to be approved. You just need to make sure you review it and you discuss it. But both of those two documents are based on national best practice, and they will be ready to go. An easy thing to accomplish because they have already been drafted.
And I just wanted to add to that I actually submitted the draft ordinance that Bernardo provided us to legal, and they're reviewing that right now to determine the best way to move forward with that. And then we'll be looking at the draft policy together and making any changes or adding to it where we need to. So that's coming forward soon.
Oh, okay. Wonderful news. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Bernardo and Brenda. Most of all, thank you, Bernardo, for bringing this to the City of Auburn. And I have seen the Auburn demographic before, and I was a little surprised to see the City of Auburn's staff demographic. So as we can see, we have a lot of work to do, and to make it our staff and our directors to resemble the people that live here in Auburn. So thank you very much for bringing this to us.
Our pleasure.
And council, some of the demographics, as you are aware, will change based on the census data. We received recently notification that data has been delayed for various reasons, as most of you shake your head like, we knew that was going to be the case. But much of the work that that Brenda was talking about with GIS, which will be fascinating and incredibly informative work, will be best utilized once we have that data, because the census data and demographics of the city are about 10 years old, with speculation on what some of those changes are on an annual basis. And so to be able to have the census data will be a significant benefit to us as we move forward with this work. Other questions for Bernardo or Brenda? Comments? I don't see any hands raised and I don't hear any voices. So I will assume that that means you are taking this all in and are excited for our journey as we move forward to make Auburn a place where people are proud to live, work, and attend school and enjoy life, quality of life. And so we are excited for this journey as well. And Bernardo, we certainly want to thank you and your team for your passionate expertise. And we are excited for this journey. And thank you for sticking with us when a previous council did not always see the value, validity, and need for this work.
Mayor, it is a pleasure to serve, and we are confident that you're going to be a beacon of light, not only for the state, but for the nation. And it was our pleasure to be in this partnership. And yeah, we thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And so if there are not any other questions, we will leave the meeting.
Thank you, Bernardo. And by the way, I love that background that you have. I've always admired that whenever.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone.
Thank you, Caitlin. I love your background too. All right, council. It feels like we've been through an entire meeting and yet we haven't even got to the business portion of tonight. We have no proclamations, but we had some wonderful presentations this evening. So we will move to appointments. What is going on with the views here? There we go. All right, tonight we have Human Services Committee, and that is the City Council to confirm the reappointment of Jason Berry to the Human Services Committee for a term to expire December 31st, 2023. Councilmember Trout-Manuel, did you have your hand up to make the motion?
Yes, I do, Mayor. Thank you. I'd like to make the motion to accept Jason Berry to the Human Services Committee for a term to expire December 2023.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown.
I would like to second that motion, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I have had the privilege of knowing Jason Berry for the past 7 years as the Executive Director of the Auburn YMCA and also the Chair of the Human Services Committee, and seeing firsthand the passion he has had serving as this committee chair. We're so lucky to have people like Jason who loves to serve in their community by giving of his time doing this volunteer position and doing it well. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor of the reappointment of Jason Berry to the Human Services Committee, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Passes. Right, we have no agenda modifications tonight that I am aware of. And so we have no public hearings. Audience participation, as you are aware, is not in person at this point in time. Participants can submit written comments via mail, fax, or email. All written comments must be received prior to 5 p.m. on the day of the scheduled meeting and must be 350 words or less. Please mail comments to City of Auburn, attention Sean Campbell, City Clerk, 25 West Main Street, Auburn, Washington, 98001. Please fax comments, if people still fax, to attention Sean Campbell, City Clerk, 253-804-3116, or email comments to publiccomment@auburnwa.gov. And Teresa, I believe we did have audience participation. If you would like to read that into the record, please.
We received one public comment from Bob Zimmerman. Mr. Zimmerman expressed concerns about propane tank safety.
Thank you. And council, I believe you have all received that email. All right. We have no correspondence this evening. We will move to council ad hoc committee reports. The chairs may report on the status of their ad hoc council committee's progress on assigned tasks and may give their recommendation to the city council if there is any. We have one ad hoc committee right now, that is finance, and it is chaired by Councilmember Baggett.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Council Ad Hoc Finance Committee, consisting of Councilmember Jayaraj and myself, reviewed 101 pages of 2021 claims vouchers totaling $3.7 million, dated February 16th, 2021. The committee also reviewed payroll vouchers for the period January 27th, 2021 to February 9th, 2021 in the amount of $2.4 million. All questions requested from the City of Auburn Finance Department regarding these vouchers were answered to the committee's satisfaction, and upon completion of our review, the committee recommends council approval of these vouchers. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move to the consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered by the City Council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed. Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Councilmember Baggett.
I'll second that, Your Honor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
So tonight's consent agenda are the minutes of the February 1st, 2021 regular council meeting and the claims vouchers and payroll vouchers as identified by Councilmember Baggett.
Council, do you have any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Seeing all heads shaking no, if you would please unmute. All of those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say no. Consent agenda passes. We have no unfinished business. We will move to ordinances. And tonight, the first ordinance, 6812, I will read the ordinance, but before the motion, we will ask Finance Director Jamie Thomas to provide a report. So ordinance number 6812, an ordinance establishing the local sales and use tax rate for local revitalization financing for 2021. Director Thomas.
Good evening, Council. This is an ordinance that I would have normally brought to study session last week and asked for adoption tonight, which is why I will be giving a brief update tonight. You may recognize this ordinance. This is an ordinance that the council adopts annually for the last 12 years. It's a sales tax option that the city has, that the state actually has provided for local revitalization finance areas, which the city first took advantage of 12 years ago. We issued some bonds and did some capital improvements to our downtown core area. The state allows us to levy a portion of the state's sales tax that they collect up to $250,000 We levy that, we get up to $250,000, and we use that money to pay the debt service on those bonds that we issued for those capital improvements that we had done in the local revitalization area in downtown. This is our 12th year. We're able to do this for 25 years. So we're about halfway through, and we actually just refunded our bonds related to the initial debt service for those capital projects back in September. So, and then the rest of the funding that we get for paying that debt service is from our REIT funds. So any questions, and I would be happy to answer those.
Council, do you have any questions for Director Thomas? All right. So there is typically at least any ordinance is typically brought to a study session prior to it coming to a city council meeting. And as Jamie mentioned, because our study session was canceled last week, this is a bit unusual. I will call on Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to suspend City Council Procedure Rule 3.1, subsection N, subsection 2, requiring an ordinance to be included on a study session agenda prior to being included in a City Council agenda for consideration.
Councilmember Brennan.
I would second that motion, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of suspending the rules for an ordinance to be taken through study session first, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say no. Passes. All right, now I have read ordinance number 6812 into the record. Is there a motion? Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt ordinance number 6812.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown.
I would second that motion as well, Mayor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. As Director Thomas mentioned, this is our annual review, and we still have halfway to go, so we're in pretty good shape for our $250,000 a year.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council? Hearing and seeing none, if you would please unmute. All those in favor of ordinance number 6812, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say no. Passes. Moving to resolutions. Resolution number 5577, a resolution adopting a 2021 through 2024 strategic business plan for the Auburn Municipal Airport. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Stearns.
There we go. Thank you, Your Honor. I move to adopt resolution 5577.
Thank you. Councilmember Malinga.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Councilmember Stearns.
Thank you, Your Honor. As we all heard earlier today, the Airport Advisory Board recently updated the strategic business plan for the Auburn Airport to guide the work of the board in the city over the next 4 years. The resolution before us adopts the 2021-2024 strategic business plan for the airport.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from council? Hearing none. All those in favor of resolution number 5577, please unmute and say aye.
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 All opposed, please say no. Resolution passes. All right, we have come to the point on the agenda for mayor and council member reports. At this time, the mayor and city council may report on significant items associated with their appointed positions on federal, state, regional, and local organizations. And as per usual, we will begin with Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Thank you, Your Honor. I had quite a few events I attended virtually, but I'm going to highlight just two this evening. And one is, along with Councilmember Stearns and Councilmember Trout Manuel, we attended the virtual Association of Washington Cities City Action Days. Normally this time of the year, we are in Olympia 2 days to meet with our colleagues, go through a number of sessions and meet with our legislative representatives. But this year we did it all online and took place in a lot of different events. One I'd like to highlight is AWC has their legislative priorities and initiatives, and one is related to housing stability. So quickly, just a couple of statistics. Nearly 1 in 4 renters have little or no confidence in making their rent next month. So 25% of the people are having some difficulty there. 10% of homeowners behind in payments are at risk of foreclosures in 2 months. And currently there's almost 560,000 Washington households that are housing unstable. AWC reports that housing is no longer serves only the basic shelter due to the public health crisis. Housing is also a quarantine space, an office, a school, a daycare center. The pandemic has brought the world to a standstill, and hundreds of thousands of Washingtonians are unable to pay their housing bills at a time when stable housing is more critical than ever. There are 3 significant bills that we classify as strong cities, and through AWC, we say strong cities, great state as our motto. And 3 of those, one is House Bill 1277, which is rental assistance payments to bolster that up. And it's a request of $328 million over the next 3 years in the governor's budget. And this will be provided by increasing the document recording fee, which is a real estate recording fee. It'll raise it by $100, which is significant. But when you look at the total cost overall, it's only about $1 per thousand for that. The additional state resources they're looking at is through Senate Bill 5160. This addresses additional resources for statewide eviction mediation and legal aid services to keep renters in their homes. And lastly, House Bill 1108, which is regarding foreclosure prevention assistance. And I'll let Councilors Trout Manuel and Stearns talk about their particular aspects of this as well. The other is I was honored on behalf of the mayor this past Saturday to attend the Lakota chapter of the Daughters of American Revolution annual awards presentation. And if you recall, Council, for most of us, every year there was a proclamation the mayor did, and we had representatives from DAR in council chambers dressed appropriately to receive the proclamation and to continue on with their work that they do in the city. Tremendous amount of work that they do as a DAR, including this year. They are currently working on construction of a little free library that's going to be installed at Indian Tom Park this spring. So they're working diligently on that. Number of awards were presented to school students, and it was great to see school students virtually there as well to receive their awards. Volunteers received community service awards, but the highlight of the award ceremony was the presidential memorial certificate that was presented to former council member Bill Pelosa on behalf of his dedicated work to DAR for over 16 years. And although we didn't get to hear Joyce over the award ceremony, she was there and she was the one who accepted the certificate. So it was really great seeing that and to have our former colleague Bill honored in that way, gone but still remembered and still an impact in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor DeCoursey. And yes, council member and former Deputy Mayor Pelosa was always a strong supporter, and I always appreciated him representing the city of Auburn at those events. I think they probably enjoyed seeing him more than if I were there. So it was a mutual admiration society indeed. All right, moving to Councilmember Trout Manuel.
I unfortunately do not have a report to give.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Baggett.
Thank you, Your Honor. I attended today the 3 regional transit boards and commissions for King County. And basically, there were just a few highlights that I'd want to let everyone know about. Sound Transit was there and made a presentation about their current activities. And just to let everybody know, there's 28 light rail stations currently under construction this year. And that's going to be a monumental addition to the transportation of people from one end of the communities to the other. Ridership, however, is still down 70 to 80% all the way around. And of course, like most everybody else, they're suffering from revenue shortages. I think that there was one other thing about the link. Can't even read my own writing here. I think I'll move over to we had a report from a legislative analyst, Mike Shaw, and basically told us what the things were that were going on. He's a legislative lobbyist in Olympia, been doing it for about 30 years. And I think the big thing that came out of his report was that a lot of the committees and that are currently active right now are discussing increases to the gas tax, and that would be anywhere from possibly 4 to 6 cents a gallon. And none of those have come out of committee yet, but they're really talking about it. And I guess we have to wait and see what comes out of all of that from Olympia. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown.
I have no report tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Stearns.
Thank you, Your Honor. I attended my first meeting on the Regional Water Quality Committee. And that's a committee that's responsible for reviewing and recommending countywide policies and plans related to water pollution abatement and water quality improvement. This is a big year. There's a new clean water plan that's being drafted. And we also received a report on some of the other big issues coming up. One will be nutrients, and that's going to be affected by developments at the state level. The state's developing stricter standards for nutrient discharges from wastewater treatment plants in the Puget Sound. And what we're hearing is that the new standard will probably cost King County around $1 billion. So, and we may have to have a fourth treatment plant in addition to Brightwater and South and West Point. So there may be some new costs. And then secondly, is in terms of the clean water plan, that's just going to be developed throughout the year. And then we also heard a little bit from the county about their new clean water healthy habitat plan, which really is aimed at addressing stormwater. So that's my report from the Regional Water Quality Committee. And as the Deputy Mayor mentioned, I was able to attend the Association of Washington Cities City Action Days. It was pretty cool. It was definitely different, and certainly would recommend anyone else can attend that. That would be great. I sat in on some of the police reform issues, and those the association is focused on accountability and transparency, as well as what we discussed earlier today, equity for people in the criminal justice system. So there are a lot of bills in Olympia. Some are moving quicker than others, some are not going to move, but it was really just it was a lot to take in, and we'll just keep on following the legislation in Olympia. That is my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jay Raj.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have a report this evening.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Kalinga.
Nothing to report, Your Honor, this evening.
All right. Thank you. A few things, as you are all hopefully aware, the Auburn Consolidated Resource Center, which is it's the strip mall down on Auburn Way North that the city has leased. The food bank will be going in there. The Ray of Hope Day Center is operating there, as well as the Sundown Overnight Shelter. Kent Hay, who is our outreach coordinator, has also begun the resource center on Thursdays, and that is open to the public. It's only operational for a few hours each Thursday right now, but we anticipate that being a larger presence in the near future as Kent works with different service providers. Right now, what he has set up in there is very basic. It's a few tables. He brings in several iPads and works with people who come in to get them set up for the services that they are eligible for, and allowing them the opportunity to, in some cases, get their driver's license or a state ID, or apply for jobs, or get on the list for housing, HEN vouchers, so many different things that Kent is able to assist people in our community with. And that is for the future stage of the community court that will be going into that space as well. And so we will be coming forward to you with some changes and requests in the near future to enable the community court to be a success in our community, but very excited, and also working with some potential tenants in that space that the city will not be using. So very excited. COVID, while it delayed us a bit, as Kent will tell you, there is not a thing that he can't do. And I am truly beginning to believe that from him as he works through all of the challenges, as well as goes out on a daily basis, as you know, into the deep woods to find those individuals who are unsheltered and to provide them with services. On the 4th of February, I am very excited to say, well, on the 3rd and 4th, there were interviews through the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. I serve as a Sound Cities Association member on the governing board and the implementation board. We did joint interviews with the 2 finalists for the executive director for the authority. I'm not sure that both names are public yet, but I will tell you that there was an overwhelming acceptance and support for Regina Cannon. That has been in the newspaper. I'm not sharing any secrets at this point. Regina Cannon has many years of experience. I want to just share with you a few things. A result-based leader with 18 years of professional experience in system design, equitable housing and supportive services delivery, community capacity building, racial equity training, strategic planning, project management, workflow analysis and process improvement, college level teaching, and youth and adult leadership training. There has been a job offer made to Regina. We are all very hopeful that she will accept the job offer. It is a big challenge that faces whomever is in that role. But I will tell you that one of the things during those interviews, I was able to ask a question, and while some of that is confidential information from an executive session, I will tell you that when there were concerns over varying perspectives on how to deal with the homelessness situations in our respective cities, and how would she bring cities together. Her comments were around being invited in for those conversations. Very refreshing, very real, ideal approach on how to handle the situation, as I said, and as you all are aware, it is not a one size fits all. And what works in Auburn may not work in Bellevue, and what works in Bellevue may not work in Seattle. And so we have fought hard for a sub-regional approach, and we will continue to fight hard to ensure that those in our community, both sheltered and unsheltered, are provided with the support that we are able to provide. So I am excited by that. Hopefully next time I will be able to share with you that there has been a contract put in place for her employment. This morning, I was able to testify in front of the House Finance Committee on House Bill 1521. And that has to do with reestablishing what most of you would be familiar with as streamlined sales tax. When that initiative went in place several years ago, it created winner cities and loser cities. Auburn was one of those loser cities because it meant that the sales tax goes to the city where the person ordering is, or where that sale takes place, not where it is delivered from, as it was. So Auburn and Kent, Tukwila, Sumner are all part of that valley that is so rich with warehousing and provides a great deal of support for both the Seattle and Tacoma ports. And so we had the opportunity this morning, because while there was a bill passed in the last session, as you may recall, Governor Inslee vetoed that bill and made it retroactive. And so we lost out on over $1 million in funding last year, $1 million this year currently. And so we are very thankful that our representatives from the 47th, Representative Intamin and Sullivan, were both sponsors of this bill that would reestablish that mitigation funding for the losses. And this in no way, shape, or form covers all of the losses since streamlined sales tax was implemented, but it is a help, and $1 million per year is a significant amount for us to have lost. So we will keep you posted on that as well. And I don't believe we, Councilmember Jayraj, did you have a question?
Yes, Your Honor. So when is this going to take effect?
When is it going to take effect?
The ordinance that was passed in the sales tax issue. That.
So the streamlined sales tax.
Yeah.
That's House Bill 1521. It's still just a bill at this point in time. There is a schedule on when things have to come out of committee, but since this has a financial impact, it is still a live bill until close to the end of the session. So there are no guarantees that this bill will pass.
Oh, okay. All right. For some reason, I thought it was already passed, so.
No, I was testifying along with the mayor of Issaquah and Tukwila and Renton and Sumner this morning, asking for support from the Finance Committee so that it can come out of committee into the full House and then to the Senate.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, we have no reason that I am aware of for a closed or executive session, and we stand adjourned.